All right, I think we're going to get going. First of all, I would like to welcome everyone to our first webinar of 2024. My name is Elizabeth Lien. I am the Senior Director for Federal Climate Policy at WWF, and I'm also the program lead for America is All In. America is All In is the most expansive coalition of leaders ever assembled in support of climate action in the United States. And that includes representatives from all 50 states, representing 65% of the population and 68% of US GDP. It's a pretty expansive group, and we're very excited to have you here today. Let me just pull up the agenda. If I could have that up on screen, we can walk through what we have. We're going to start with a little bit of background on what America's All In. We're going to go back in history to see all of the accomplishments from last year, and then more importantly, thinking about what's to come in 2024. Then I'm going to have the great honor of asking Gina McCarthy some questions. And please, if others have questions, you can put them into the Q&A section on the bottom of your screen. Nate Hultman is then going to go through the 2035 NDC overview, and we'll wrap up with Q&A. There will be a few things that we'll be able to preview on upcoming events with All In that we're really excited to bring your way. Next slide, please. So America's All In, as I mentioned, is extremely expansive. We do have some gaps in our membership and are seeking ways to further support our members and improve our coordination across membership throughout our partners. Our top line goals for the year are to maximize the uptake of climate policy through our members. Mayors see things very differently than CEOs or small business owners. Faith leaders see things differently than public health officials, and we want to make sure that what we are providing to our members resonates with everyone in the way that they come to the issue. We need to make sure that every investment dollar from the federal support delivers benefits to communities across the country in a way that's inclusive and impactful. And we want to make sure that all of society coordination is strong. America's All In provides a platform for groups to learn from each other and be inspired. When a firehouse in Erie, Pennsylvania, for instance, installs solar panels with backup battery storage to provide coverage during electricity blackouts, including support for neighbors who need to keep their medications refrigerated, other communities take note. And finally, with increasing attention being given to subnational actors at the international level and new platforms such as the Coalition for High Ambition multi-level partnership launched at COP28, All In will continue to be a model for national and subnational voices being heard as federal climate policies come together. We have sister coalitions in more than 10 countries around the world driving towards similar goals. Our detailed strategy for 2024 will see America is All In more active than any time in our history. 2024 truly is a year where we need to go all in. Next slide, please. 2023 was notable, and it's important to understand what worked well and areas where we can really double down on the work that we have done. Here's a brief look back at some of the significant work from last fall. Not long after Gina McCarthy joined as managing co-chair, we were thrilled to have another former EPA administrator come on as co-chair, Lisa Jackson, who has been heading up environmental initiatives at Apple. Her expertise and the climate leadership of Apple are a huge asset to All In's work, and we're excited to have her. We also kicked off our Cash In on Clean Energy tour in Charlotte with another co-chair, Mayor Vi Lyles. The All In teams, led by the work of RMI, went to Columbus and Orlando as well, hosting workshops for members to dive deep into how to understand and access the myriad funding opportunities within the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law. More details will be coming soon as we unveil the cities All In will be visiting this year. And as we've done since COP23 in 2017, we hosted multiple days of programming at COP28 in Dubai. All In members had meetings with senior administration officials, including the current White House National Climate Advisor, Ali Zaidi. There were also a new platform designed by Bloomberg Philanthropies and the COP28 presidency called the Local Climate Action Summit, which highlighted the importance of subnational climate leadership. We also announced a robust stakeholder engagement process to support the administration's 2035 climate strategy, or NDC. And then on the next slide, we're going to start looking towards what's next. Some specific work we want to point you to. On our website, on americasallin.com, we have an excellent database of federal funding opportunities. You can sort by your institutional type and sector with deadlines and links on how to apply. Thanks to our partners at RMI for developing this amazing tool. Like last year, we will host city-level engagements, and stay tuned for more details, as I mentioned previously. We also intend to work with partners on strengthening community development plans, not just to more effectively access IRA funds through the Justice 40 initiative, but to really support strong community engagement, particularly in historically disadvantaged communities. There were some really significant state policy wins that it's important to celebrate in 2023. Some of these are mentioned here in Minnesota, Colorado, and Washington, all with all-in member support. And in 2024, we see a lot of opportunities at the state level yet again to focus on getting states to access federal dollars or working with others to develop climate policies that are impactful. In some cases, we will be focused on protecting climate policies that are under fire. And we want to work with all of you to reach, to help us with that work. Going forward, it's critical that we lift up examples of where the IRA and other climate policies are providing real and important benefits in communities. And we want to help, we want your help in finding and telling these stories, whether it's in your own institution or community, or just something you've seen that deserves more attention. This is the storytelling work that we're doing here. Next slide, please. Yeah, actually, thank you. We are now at the point where we are going to turn to our managing co-chair. If you don't know her, you should know her. But this is, I would like to introduce Gina McCarthy, the first White House National Climate Advisor and former US EPA Administrator. Gina McCarthy is one of the nation's most respected voices on climate change, the environment, and public health. As head of the Climate Policy Office under President Biden, McCarthy's leadership led to the most aggressive action on climate in US history, creating new jobs and unprecedented clean energy innovation and investments across the country. Her commitment to bold action across the Biden administration, supported by the climate and clean energy provisions in the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, restored US climate leadership on a global stage and put a new US national target to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 50 to 52% below 2005 levels by 2023 within reach. We are honored to have her here, and I'm going to turn over the floor to you.
Elizabeth, first of all, thank you for the great introduction, and thanks everybody for joining. It's a really exciting moment for me to be with all of you today. Look, I had the privilege of working on many policies in the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as the bipartisan infrastructure law when I was in the White House. And while federal leadership, as we all know, is important, we also know that subnational climate leaders are where the action is. That's where these federal policies and resources get turned into real action on the ground, that get people excited and hopeful again. So I joined All In because they get this, and they are incredibly well positioned to do something about it because of all the partners and all the members and all those that we're going to grab and bring into this system so that we can get excited and hopeful about the future. Look, we all know that change happens from the bottom up. That's what always happens. I've worked at the state and local level. I know what the federal government does, but I know where all the action is. And we need to work together with all of our members and all of our partners so that we can make good and lasting change happen on the ground. And that's why I really joined All In. We all know that now is the time for all of us to work together in our communities, especially in the communities that have been held back for far too long, in communities that are most vulnerable to the tremendous impacts of climate change. So let's take full advantage of the unprecedented investments in the Inflation Reduction Act. This is the year when we have to put those investments to work for our communities, for our health, and for our climate. Look, all of you on this call are on the front line of change. And All In is here to work with you to help you succeed. And guidance from the federal government, while it continues to go out, is enough to drive all of us crazy. It's complicated, it's confusing. Well, we're here to break through that and to help you understand how that guidance can work for you. So check out our no-nonsense, straight-talking federal climate funding hub at americasallin.com for the grants and the programs that serve your particular type of institution. And we can all get in touch directly so we can help with anything and any questions that you have. This is what All In is all about. Because look, these investments, they're not pipe dreams. They're investments that are real opportunities that are already being realized across the country. And none of us want our states or communities to be left behind. So it's time to get excited. It's time to be hopeful. It's time to act in big and small ways so we can grab the future together, the healthy, clean energy future that we all need and frankly, we all deserve. We want you to be helpful and we want us to be there for you so you can be bold, so you can be unafraid, and to be big pains in the butt by learning about all the investments and opportunities that are out there so you can ensure that none of them pass your community or your state by. Look, let me just take 2 minutes to highlight just a couple of really, for me, inspiring examples of the type of projects that we want to replicate all across the country. Look, Brockton, Massachusetts is a community that is near and dear to my heart because, as you might guess, I'm from the Boston area, and it's now home to the country's first net zero mental health facility. So if you don't think the Inflation Reduction Act can help for everyone, then listen to this story because it happened because of the leadership of the Brockton Behavioral Center, because they decided that they're investing in their facilities in a way that would align with their mission. So they made investments funded in large part by the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law, because they knew that healthcare and sustainability are inseparably linked. If you want details, go to the All In website and check out a great video about the facility showing how they managed to pull this project off and save money that they can now reinvest in their community. These are big deals for these places, and they should be big deals for us so that we can find an opportunity to celebrate. And one more highlight was in the state of Washington because of all the hard work of my friend and my fellow All-In co-chair, Governor Jay Inslee, who demonstrates every day what amazing state level leadership looks like. In 2021, Washington State passed one of the most impactful state climate policies ever. It's called the Climate Commitment Act. It's a cap and invest program that's going to drive huge emission reductions while raising a lot of money for the state to reinvest back into the state and its communities in ways that are both equitable and sustainable. But of course, because it's so great, the Climate Commitment Act is facing pushback from fossil fuel interests and climate deniers who have successfully put this on as a ballot initiative. So we're all over this, and we will do everything we can to protect that legislation this fall. But as always, we always need your help, not just to make progress, but to stop any backsliding. Look, over the coming weeks, you're going to see the All-In team with the help of our partners and our members. We're going to be heading out across the country to help lift up great stories of climate action. We need to inspire people, engage our youth, engage old folks like me, because we need inspiration and we need support. and we'll be sharing more details on where we'll be in the coming weeks. And we hope to work with you to help amplify your stories across our channels and media, because if there's something that you're doing or a great project that you have heard about that we could then highlight for you, really, that is how we're going to win together. This isn't going to be an easy year coming up. We know that. We need to get busy to protect what we've accomplished and to plow the path forward for more and more good things to come. That's what America is all in about. That's what I am all in about as well. Let's just do this together. Elizabeth, back to you.
Thank you, Gina. I'm pretty fired up. That was great. Thank you. I want to take this opportunity to ask you a couple of questions. Some
Sure.
of them we had in the hopper, some of them we can get from folks who are leaving them in the Q&A section now. I would love to hear from you, Gina, focusing on the year ahead. Can you help us ground us in what the most exciting things are for 2024? Where is the action going to come from? Where do you see potential? And then, of course, how can we support it?
Well, I think what's going to happen, and what is frankly already happening, is we're going to be working together so that a better future isn't just possible. I believe that it's already happening. Some might disagree with me, but my ears are wide open and my eyes are wide open. And all I can see is opportunity ahead. And all I have to do is look around at cities, city governments and businesses and nonprofits. All of them are tapping into funding from the Inflation Reduction Act because it makes our transition to the clean energy economy possible. You know, I was really excited to join America's All In because it's about turbocharging our clean energy future. That is what I see in this year. Together, we're going to ensure that we don't miss out on this really what is a one time in a million, a generational opportunity to grow good paying jobs, improve our air quality, make our communities more resilient, and save families money so we can give our kids and grandkids the kind of future they deserve. That's what we're going to see happening. Already $310 billion have been promised by the private sector. We have to keep them making good on that promise. And we're moving forward with jobs in the hundreds of thousands. So we're already there where we need to be now, but we have to keep driving forward.
Yeah, very much agree. You know, Gina, you have really been a proponent of bringing public health into the discussion, and in fact, there was just a Reuters article talking about a lot of the work that you did, highlighting this at COP and elsewhere. Could you speak a little bit to the intersection between public health and climate? It's not obvious to everyone, and for others, it's something that they feel and breathe every day. So I'd love to sort of hear from you why that connection is so strong.
Well, thanks, Elizabeth. I'm glad you raised that. You know, health and climate has always been of ultimate importance to me because, you know, I see climate change as a public health problem. You know, it's all about people, and it's all about the resources we need to be healthy, to have significant opportunities moving forward for our kids. So I talk about climate and health a lot because talking about the planet just isn't grounded in the reality of what we're facing today. And we all know that fossil fuels need to be transitioned out of the system of how we power ourselves and how we move forward and make products. It's extremely important to recognize that the 7+ million people that actually have premature death every year are from breathing in air toxics, most of which emanate from the use and the burning of fossil fuels. So we have to do better. We have to think of both of them at the same time. And I think if we do that, then climate change turns into a much more personal, understandable issue that we can all begin to tackle instead of thinking that the climate is out of our control and our health is gone and won't return. I don't believe that at all. I believe that if we connect the two, people will grab it, they'll run with it. We'll have healthier people. We'll give our kids a sustainable future moving forward. That's why I connect the two.
It's so important as a fellow mom. I thank you for that. It's hard to believe, but we're just a couple of weeks removed from COP28. All In had a big presence there with many civil society groups. Can you give a brief reflection on COP28? You talk about fossil fuel. There was a big sort of blow up discussion of fossil fuel phase out. What is that going to look like? But what happened there, and what were the big takeaways?
I have to say that I've been to many, if not most, of the COPs over the past few decades. And this one I thought would be the most tenuous because of where it was being held. And COPs are always difficult. You always feel out of the loop. But this COP was different, I have to tell you. The optimism I felt was quite palpable when I went there. We had more than 100,000 people, and most of them were not world leaders. They were individuals that wanted to learn, individuals that wanted to participate in a discussion. And all over the place, the Inflation Reduction Act was the key thing that folks kept talking about, because instead of being doom and gloom, it was about investing in our future. It was about growing new jobs. It was about giving families hope and a future. And so it proved to be, I think, for me, one of the most fun. As you know, All In and Bloomberg Philanthropies was all over the place. We had mayors there that were talking about the opportunities they were having and the ways in which others can actually take similar approaches. And for me, in the end, while they included the transition from fossil fuels into the final agreement, I thought it was essential to do. I thought it was momentous, but there's so much more we need to do. And moving the private sector investment proved to be pretty good at the COP. We ended up with significant numbers of billions of dollars to invest. The tricky part is going to be making sure that that investment reaches the global south, the emerging technologies, where we owe a huge amount of gratitude and resources to, because after all, climate change is a global problem. You gotta get the global south engaged and excited about their chance in the sun, their opportunity to have sustainable development.
That's such an important point, Gina, because the bulk of investment right now is going to OECD countries, and it's not going to the global south. So that's really, really critical. Looking to the agenda and who's going to come next, I would love to have my final question focus on a document that most of our members may have no idea what it is, and I'd love for you to sort of translate that for them. We know the U.S. government needs to update its nationally determined contribution, or NDC, which is a requirement of any of the signatories to the Paris Agreement. You are deeply involved in that process of setting our current 2030 NDC. For folks who don't speak international climate negotiator language, I would love to hear from you. What is it, but why does it matter? Why does someone who lives in a community in Minnesota care about what this document is that will be submitted to the UN? And how can they support ultimately those goals that are included in that document?
Well, Elizabeth, as you're probably aware, and I think folks might already guess, I don't speak that kind of language either. So let me be very clear. First of all, I want to give credit to John Kerry for all of the work that he's done, his unwavering optimism and patience. He is leaving the administration, I believe, this coming month, and he's been just a strong supporter of our NRDC process and moving it forward. The NRDC is actually simply a commitment that every country has to stand up and identify a plan that will get them to the goals that everybody has agreed to for reducing climate pollution and getting to net zero. So it's a way to focus on getting every country to make a commitment to cut carbon pollution. In the US, we've agreed to cut carbon pollution by 50% by 2030. And that means ramping up our ambition on the next NDC, because we'll have to make or break what the next 20 years is going to bring by making sure that we are meeting our commitments and we don't simply stop accelerating our transition to clean energy. So it's nothing more than an international plan and a commitment, but it's how every country judges themselves. It's how we're supposed to design our strategies, our policies and practices at the federal, state, and local level, how we're going to demand investment by the public and private sector to actually achieve these goals. And how we're going to grow those clean energy technologies that we need to have. So it's a big opportunity for us to stand up and for us to dictate what our strategy is, how to get there, how aggressive we're going to be, and then to fulfill it. And then the NDCs is how we hold our countries accountable.
Absolutely. Gina, thank you so much for being here. We loved having you, as we always do. It's wonderful to sort of be inspired from everything that you bring to the conversation. And I really appreciate you taking the time.
You too, Elizabeth, and thanks everybody for joining, and all the team at All In. You're really terrific to work with. Thanks.
Thank you. Everybody else stay on the line, though. I'm going to introduce Nate Hultman to discuss the details of the sub-national NDC consultation plan for the year. Nate is the founder and director of the University of Maryland Center for Global Sustainability, where his team leads All In's research agenda. He served in the Office of the Special Presidential Envoy for Climate in the State Department and in the Obama White House. Nate made vital contributions to the 2025 and 2030 NDC, so he's well poised to walk us through this discussion. Welcome, Nate. We're very happy to have you.
So thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks All In team for getting us all together. Thanks to you all who are joining in the discussion right now. I have to say, in one sense, it's hard to go after Gina, but I think it's also kind of amazing to go after her because she brings such an energy to the conversation. And I'm happy to try to capture some of that now that we're feeling inspired and energized to talk a little bit about this process that we had for the last question, the NDC, or the nationally determined contribution. Now, in one sense, and I to some degree speak some of that language, having been part of Carrie's team not too long ago, and having done this for a while. But really, I think there's a couple of things for us to kind of just surface about what this means. So there is kind of a formalism. There's like a legal dimension of the NDC. It's kind of part of the international negotiation structure that was set up under Paris. And Gina did a great job, I thought, of just laying out the NDC is essentially a plan, right? Just like when most of us get into our vehicles or whatever to kind of go somewhere new, we'll punch in the coordinates, and then Google Maps or whatever will tell us kind of step by step there's a way to get there. We have to come up with that plan ourselves. There's no like Google Maps that tells us, but we can come up with that plan ourselves. And the NDC reflects the plan. A lot of times people talk about an NDC is almost like it's one number, like we're going to do 50 to 52% reductions in the US by 2030. That was the one that Gina McCarthy was responsible for developing in her tenure at the White House. And that's important, that 50 to 52% is important. But I think even more important is how we get the number and the process by which we come up with that strategy. Gina did an amazing job, I think, sort of identifying the fact that we need to bring all of our creative energy, all of our thinking, use the diversity of all of our voices and the diversity of our experiences, use the fact that there's a lot of different people and a lot of different sort of government structures, a lot of different kinds of organizations, all of whom can bring creativity, effort, and energy to solving this problem together. And one of the things that the NDC process allows us to do, which I think we want to do better this year than we've been able to do in the past, is learn from all the experiences that people have now had in the past, 8 years of working under the Paris Agreement, for example. We know that working together to build not only the NDC, but to build the understanding of what it takes to get to a high ambition climate strategy is something that comes out of conversations with each other. It comes out of that dialogue, that discourse, the generation of ideas. And that's where we have to kind of focus. What is an NDC really? It's a conversation about the things we can do. And then, of course, our team here will help think about where those ideas kind of fit into an overall architecture. And then we can sort of help other people understand, hopefully including our government as well, what that would mean in terms of our ability as the United States of America to deliver a high ambition climate goal that will deliver all those benefits for the different types of communities that we know we need to be serving across our country. And so the NDC itself is something that will be a larger process, and it will include more people. But I think one of the things that All In is going to be very excited to do, and we are excited to be part of a much larger All In community doing this work with you, is to be listening to what are the ideas, what are the opportunities, sector by sector, gas by gas, community by community. What are the things that can be done? What are the policies that can be implemented for us to do better this time than we've been able to do before? And so that's where this analysis comes in. So just to kind of wrap on this concept is that there's sort of two parts to this. One part is listening, developing a set of policies, developing a kind of understanding of how those policies might actually affect our overall, for example, emissions trajectory in the United States, but also affect other things like we mentioned in the earlier part of the session about health benefits. So let's understand what the health benefits of that high ambition trajectory are. Let's understand what the community economic benefits, the jobs benefits of that rapid, just, clean, and affordable transition looks like. And so those things are part of the kind of integration between the ideas, the development of the ideas and the policies that flow from them, and then the implementation, of course, and an estimation that the United States government might be able to use to formulate their NDC. And then the final step, of course, is communicating with our various governments. Some of you are in parts of government right now. Others might be interacting with different parts of government at different levels, whether it's federal, state, county, local, tribal government, or what have you. We can interact with our governments or be in part of the governments and then start thinking about how those can be best implemented. And this is where it's good to have those conversations early on. What's possible? The people that are already working on it know best what's possible, how we can do it, and can also bring the energy to deliver it together. So as what we're doing this year, just so kind of give you guys a read ahead of what's happening, this kind of information gathering, these consultations, stakeholder discussions will be happening over coming months. We will be doing some analysis on what they add up to and how that sort of overall aggregates to something that the U.S. could use to enhance its overall communication to the international community, and hope that the U.S. then can use that to better partner with different kinds of groups across our country, as well as start queuing up different kinds of policies that could be implemented at the federal level. So ultimately, stay tuned for kind of the analysis part of it. We're kind of we have done some initial sort of estimations of where we might land, but want to get that input from the broader community as we refine that. In addition, also starting to think about some of these other dimensions about how does it affect sectors, how does it affect different types of policy strategies at different governance levels, how does it affect equity, how does it affect other benefits like health, air quality, jobs, and whatnot. And with that, I think maybe that's all I wanted to say today, and I think we might have time for some questions then.
Exactly right. Thanks, Nate. That was really, really helpful. And I think, it's great to sort of have a sense of the analytical work that you guys are so steeped in and sort of what's to come. I am going to pull you into a hard question that came through in the Q&A. I'm going to answer it from one angle, but I'd love to get your thoughts from another, which is, given the part of the origin story of America's All In, what's the initiative's plan if there is a change in power in Washington, D.C. after the election? And once again, the U.S. is pulled out of the Paris Agreement. Clearly, this is something that the coalition is well poised to help the climate agenda move forward if there is a lack of federal leadership. There are climate leaders, as we know well, across the country who are willing to step in. That is not a substitute for federal leadership, but it is definitely something that we are thinking through now on how best to be prepared, so that we are really situated well, once we have a sense of what will happen in November. But Nate, I'm curious from an analytical perspective, not to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot, which is, if there isn't that kind of higher level federal action and the regulatory agenda that will allow us to really move the needle on some of these emissions, where do you see subnational action excelling? Where can we actually make significant progress in the event that there's not the federal leadership at the top?
Yeah, and I mean, just to start with one important point I want to make, which is like, let's keep planning for success and working toward that outcome. And then, recognizing that there is a possibility in the future that doesn't, the election goes a different way in terms of climate leadership at the federal level. This is a very good thing to be aware of, and we've had some experience in this country before with that kind of situation. In fact, we learned a lot. The origins of America's All In goes back to a period in our history when we didn't have that federal leadership. And the energy by which the subnational or kind of non-federal community responded was, in fact, tremendous and very energizing to the people who were involved with that. And I think we can look to that to do more if that sort of eventuality happens again. Now, I will say, from a kind of like now getting to the numbers question, the federal leadership dimension is very important for the highest ambition trajectories for the United States. It is true that Congress and the executive branch hold a number of policy authorities, including the kind that we see in IRA, which is like, budget and investment led from the federal level. So having that sort of part of the foot off the accelerator would slow things down. There's really no way to sort of make up for it. On the other hand, there in our country, in our federal system, federal in one sense means a set of policy authorities that are delegated to states and delegated to counties, delegated to cities and municipalities, and tribal governments and others. And so in our system, we have a very large number of policy authorities that are delegated to these other government levels. I will note one of the big ones, there's many, but one of the big ones is, for example, power sector. In states have a lot of control over how clean their power sector is. And so that's a real lever that has historically been pulled in the past, and I'm sure would be evaluated, to take great action on in the future if that were to be necessary. So ultimately, there are a lot of policy authorities in the power sector, transportation, all the ones that we're kind of concerned about to kind of drive down emissions, that the set of subnational actors in the United States can continue to make real progress on. And it's very, very important in that eventuality. It is not, it's 100 or 0. It's like, if it's not 100, we can still try to go, 70 or 80% and do what we can to keep that moving until whatever time we can re-engage the whole country in it.
I think, Nate, that's very sobering and also hopeful, if that's possible. It is really good to hear that there is a lot of action that can happen at the state level, at the city level, at the community level that can have impact. Obviously, having federal leadership is key.
Elizabeth, could I say one more thing? This has just
Please.
occurred to me. I think you mentioned a statistic like this in your intro, but I want to kind of go back to that and just for the people watching, kind of double down on this sort of idea. In the US, the non-federal actors who kind of stepped up post, previous administration and said, we want to keep doing climate stuff. The America's All In coalition represents something like 70% of US GDP. And I just want to put that in context. 70% of US GDP is roughly the size of China's economy. And so let's remember that 70%, yes, it's better to have 100%, but let's remember that 70% of our country, of our GDP, has real ability to impact global climate outcomes. And let's remember that that's kind of part of the story here. The energy that you all are bringing is a real driver of that success. So just remembering that, yeah, I know it's probably not the world we want to be in, but if that does happen, that it's important to just keep going at it.
Well said. Thank you, Nate. I really appreciate you coming and joining us and offering your perspective. Gina, too. Before folks sign off, I am going to ask my colleague Hannah to please put in the chat a link to a survey that we are asking our members to fill out. We want to be helpful to you. We want to be partners in everything that you are dealing with and struggling with, questions that you have, and we want to provide a forum for you to be able to really have impact and learn from each other. So there is a survey in the chat. Please take it. We also, Hannah put in there, if you have questions and stories, this gets to the storytelling component. We want to be able to identify stories that really resonate and resonate broadly. So if you have ideas there, please get in touch through that way. And finally, we have a lot of really exciting events coming up. We have a finance webinar that we're targeting for March. Ceres has their Lead on a Clean Economy in March event that is really wonderful. A community benefits plan event later in the spring, which we really hope will help our partners make community level connections and develop community development plans that are impactful and lasting. We have city tours that are coming. Stay tuned. We don't have those quite nailed down yet, but we'll share those details as soon as they are available. New York Climate Week is fast approaching in September, and then of course COP29 in Azerbaijan. So if you could please again go into the chat and get those links. We really want to hear from you. My thanks again to Gina and Nate and all of you for joining. I hope that you've enjoyed this webinar, and please stay in touch.